Good evening. Thank you so much for tuning in to all our viewers on YouTube, on Facebook, and of course, the people that have logged in here. This is a very exciting day for us. We have a lot of experts on the panel that can work with us to draw out very important aspects of this conversation. Today is about COVID-19 and the impact that it's had on the mental status of our fellow citizens and also the citizens across the world. It's not unique to India. It's actually a pandemic that's impacted the minds of people across different diaspora of people. And today we're really talking about how this has triggered a profound sense of loneliness, helplessness, and depression among people. Our conversation today is really going to highlight the long-term impact of this uncertainty on our mental health and how one can brave it, because it's not all about the pain areas, it's about the solutions as well. And we are going to be discussing the solutions. Before we get to our very experienced panelists, I'd like to introduce myself. I am Prakriti Poddar, the Managing Trustee of the Poddar Foundation and Director of Poddar Wellness. I've devoted my life to mental health and well-being, and that means, in the mindset, in the physical body, in the nutritional body, in the recovery programs. But most of all, my purpose has always been preventive mental health rather than curative. I feel that if we have the awareness and the knowledge, we have the capability of upholding ourselves. And I've noticed that a lot of people who focus their life on mental well-being start to tune into the same rhythm, because prevention is definitely better than cure and saves a lot of us a lot of sorrow and time. So I'd like to introduce our panelists. We have in a gist, I'm going to take you through the names and then I'm going to take you through the details of their very robust resumes and introductions. We have Ms. Anna Chandy, who's the Chairperson and the Board of Trustees of the Live, Love, Laugh Foundation. It's quite a lovely name. We have Dr. Shekhar, who is the Registrar and Head of the Center for Disaster Management at NIMHANS, and also Professor in the Department of Psychiatric Social Work. We have Swetha Subbiah with us, who's the founder and technical head of Swetha by Swetha, a fitness consulting company, and Mr. YG Muralidharan, who's focused his life on consumer rights, education and awareness, trust, and has been advocating improvements on policy. And this has been brought to us and to all of you by Deccan Herald Sparks. And this conversation will spark on, like I said, not only the awareness, but will spark on a movement towards well-being. And I want to, of course, thank all of you for being here, and please keep your questions ready as we move along. If questions come up, write them into the chat box if you can, or write them into the comments of whether it's Facebook or YouTube. We're looking at them, and we intend for the session to be interactive. We also will have polls running, so be ready to take that on, because we want to know what you feel so that we can direct this conversation. So let me now, once again, introduce Anna appropriately. Okay, Anna has, I've had the pleasure of being with her on a webinar before with E.T. Panache, and recognized in an instant that, okay, a kindred soul who has the same kind of view on healing and on moving people to optimizing their well-being. She's an encyclopedia of knowledge and has been practicing as a therapist for more than 25 years. Like I said, she's the Chairperson and the Board of Trustees of the Live, Love, Life Foundation, Live, Love, and Laugh Foundation, which is a charitable trust founded by the actor in 2015, Deepika Padukone, and has been involved in mental health for years. Like I said, 25 years, and her body of work encompasses counseling individuals from all walks of life, and really, implementing strategic interventions. So we look forward to hearing from Anna. Now moving on to Dr. Shekhar deeply, he really has, like I said, been primarily focused, especially during this time, this COVID period, on the telemental health that NIMHAN started and has managed to reach out to a lot of people in distress. I've also had the pleasure of interacting with Dr. On another mental health tele-summit where we discussed the importance of telemedicine and what really can be now allowed through telemedication. And I think that this is a very important time to be able to understand that. Moving forward, Swetha, of course, has been the founder, like I said, of by Swetha. And this is a very important aspect because the mind, body, and spirit are connected when we talk about well-being. She's the co-founder of Sister and Sweats, a community of women stitched by women in sports and wellness. And she's been a personal trainer, fitness coach for over a decade, and is one of Nike certified instructors in the country. I'm extremely happy to have her on this panel as well. Dr. Muralidharan, who has been the founder of the Consumer Rights and Education Awareness Trust, has been advocating improvements. And just before this conversation, he said, I'm the odd one out. And I think that is something that we're gonna change because having him on the panel is one of the most important things because mental health and policy has to be linked so that we can actually democratize what mental health means and take it to all the various nooks and crannies of India so that mental health can be upheld. And like I said before, this panel is going to need your inputs as well. So starting off with our first poll before we get Anna to speak, because she'd also like to hear, what are some of your areas of concern? And this may seem like a very redundant question, but I like to always start with that. The idea of the first poll, I'd like to have that up as well, is have you noticed an increase in your stress levels post this lockdown period? That's a yes and a no, and please, do enter your responses in that so we can kind of understand how many of you have really experienced a heightened level and moved from regular everyday stress to a more chronic stress and anxiety. Thank you very much, Anna. The poll will be coming up, and all our members, even on YouTube and Facebook, as well as on our chat, will be able to give us a response for this. But my first question to you really is, how does one cope with the uncertainty and anxiety, which is being caused by that, the stress that has been enhanced, and with the view that there's actually still no clear idea of how to mitigate this disease?
Let me start by saying the way each individual reacts or responds to the current situation is how they were before the pre-COVID. And a good metaphor to start would be, it's like standing on a tufted carpet. When you step off, the way the tuft will come back or the spring back depends on how the condition of the carpet before you stepped on it. So there's how you were pre-COVID would be the way you're going to be reacting or responding to the current situation. The second part is all of us globally, universally, all of us in our own ways, in diverse ways, have been coping with some form of uncertainty due to the disruption, and therefore there is some form of grief. And I think the grief varies because the grief comes in different ways for different people, because whatever their loss has been, and therefore people are really struggling with the uncertainty and the grief. And I, for one, particularly want to highlight that in the past 3-4 months, what we've seen in our practice, and I've been talking to other therapists, etc., is the age group of 24 to 30. uh, the number of people in that age group who've been reaching out, expressing anxiety and concern has definitely increased substantially. And therefore, how do you cope? And to me, there are three ways. One is, I think it's very important to account for our contextual reality. And our contextual reality is that there is going to be uncertainty for the next, in my view, 18 to 24 months at least, till the proper vaccines are in place and we can move on with that. The second part is, I think you work with the body, and to me, body and breath, because as we've discussed earlier, the breath is so powerful, and especially what we call soft belly breathing to calm the mind. And the third is, to me, is about body, any form of physical activity, whatever. Some people want, have choices, preferred choices, so you do that. And the final aspect that I look at is communicate. And we need to learn to communicate. We need to learn to talk openly and listen to other people and express what we are going through. So I call it the ABC of how do you respond to this situation. That is accounting, body and breath, and communicate. I think these are the three steps for us, simple steps for the lay person and some of us to be able to contain ourselves. Having said that, are we not going to still not experience grief and difficulty? Yes, we are. So this is what I would say, Prakriti.
Thank you very much. And let's have a look at the poll results before we go on to the next question. So 65% of people have experienced more stress than before the lockdown. I think that's really important, and especially going by what you said, if you have a predisposition and have had a predisposition to stress, likely it is that you would have increased those levels, but hopefully, Anna said, you spring back to your normal levels as soon as you are able to use the ABC model, which she's described. I think that's fantastic. Accounting, breath work, and communication. Moving on to the next question, Anna, still with you. In most of the webinars, people seem to ask me this question. And I think it's a relevant question because in India, there's so much stigma around mental health. People don't know really when to reach out to a therapist. So they're like, they haven't understood when does the symptom aggravate enough for them to actually go to a therapist and not work with it independent of a therapist.
So Prakriti, I come from a school of thinking that you don't go for counseling or therapy because you're mentally ill or mentally disturbed. You go for counseling or therapy because all of us experience life issues, varying life issues, and they cause a certain amount of distress. And so when you seek professional support, it's to minimize the distress. So when do we seek therapy? I think because of the stigma associated, that anybody who goes to a therapist or a counselor is, stereotypically, as inverted commas, they're mad. I think that's a myth. All of us have life issues all over the world, and basically we need to seek help if we can't cope with those life issues and contain our lives so that we feel and lead a satisfied life.
Sorry, I lost you there for a minute. I'm back now. Um, you know, I agree with you. And I think that this is why we want the policies to be in place. Um, I think mental health needs to be implemented at the school level so that conversations around mental health are continuous and it doesn't happen when one needs the support. It happens on a regular basis so that you can uphold yourself, going back to the preventive strategies of mental health. There is another poll I'd like to actually have now, because it's really important for me to now understand what are the aspects of these challenges that you've been facing as the audience. I know that only the people on our participatory group on Zoom can answer these questions, but for the people on Facebook and YouTube, even though you can't, we'd like you to put in the comments what you feel. What aspects, this is our second poll, what aspects challenge you the most? Is it monetary challenges that are causing stress? Is it the emotional challenges such as depression? Is it dysphoria, which is a generalized feeling of anxiety? Or is it anxiety? What is really causing you the most amount of stress? Looking forward to your poll as the results of your poll as I move on, and I will come back to the results of these polls and announce it. But moving to you, Dr. Shekhar, it's really important to sort of get your opinion on what people are really calling about, especially given the helpline that you've set up, where I think there were days where you had over 90,000 calls, if I remember correctly the numbers. I may not, it may be a week, but I remember 90,000 somewhere. And I'd really like to know what are some of the reasons why people have been calling your helpline? What is it that they need and they approach with their distress? You're on mute. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Prakriti. When we started this helpline way back on March 29th, and as on today, there had been more than 4 lakh calls, 400,000 calls. And we have attended to on a continued manner with about 50,000 people. We are still continuing to go about it. 3 things I would like to mention. There are phases of this particular pandemic which is going on, which we need to remember. I go with the first poll saying that people are stressed to 66%, which means it is not the 100% or 99% as it started with. Almost everyone was touched by this event and was stressed to some extent or the other. Unfortunately, we don't have a thermometer which looks at our emotion to say that as on today, I'm stressed to 90%, today it's 70%, 60% and more. But we can always have a self-inbuilt thermometer to look at how much I am stressed and how I am coping along with that. And to give you, in the first part of the lockdown, there was a large amount of a panic, there was a large amount of anxiety in our callers, especially on issues pertaining to unemployment, unavailability of food and ration, and transportation issues. I remember one of the call, when is the train between Gundakal and Guwahati going to start? For reason, the person wanted to get back to Guwahati at the earliest because he was working for his village and he lost his job and they said, we don't know when we are going to open it. So at least he wanted to be with the family. So that was the lockdown phase 1. But as we moved to the lockdown phase 2, it was the issues of the migrant laborers who are wanting to again have the transportation. When does the Sharmik Express will go? What are the ways and means I have to? And unemployment among the unskilled workers, which was much, much larger as they were thrown out onto the streets and all. And among the skilled person, not knowing what it is going to, when I'm going to have a pink slip, what it is going to be if in case I'm not having an internet connectivity to connect back with my office and all. And the issues were about the children. Oh, the SSLC exam didn't occur. When is going to be the NEET occurring? I had prepared my child to such an extent. What are they going to have? These sort of a habituated sort of a things which people were going on a normal phase when it was disturbed. Three things came into picture. One was the thought, next one was the feeling, and the last one was the thing in terms of thoughts, feeling, and their behavior. When there was a negative thought, there was a negative feeling, and there was a negative behavior which came into picture. As we proceeded to unlock 3, there was a bit of domestic violence, what we could see. I was away from my husband for almost about 8 hours, and I preserved my mental health. But today I have to face him for the 8 hours, and there is a bit of a verbal as well as certain physical issues with my husband, what I'm facing too. I would have completed my job of cooking by 8 o'clock, and 9 o'clock I'm in the office as fresh as a flower, and I start my day with the type of a coping what I had. That coping has been out. These are part of the expressed emotions which were there among the people. As we went along with the lockdown 4, there was truly a worry about the future and a large amount of a stigma which started occurring. I have been identified as positive. My name has been put up on the street. People are looking at my house from a distance, and they are calling that I am a COVID patient. I didn't want the word patient. I am not a patient. I had been infected. I had been quarantined. That's all I was told. But why are these people calling me on a thing? Now, this is a place or point of time when we did psychosocial first aid for the person, asking them to ventilate their feeling, as well as providing some empathetic sort of a situation for them to keep communicating to us. From there, now we are into a sort of a psychosocial care period, wherein we are giving them actual tips for each and every one how to get. But we are slowly entering into the psychosocial support situation today, as we are crossing the 4 lakh population mark on our telelink, that people are now asking that I permanently don't have food, how would I survive? Yeah. I'm having a feeling of loneliness. I'm feeling worthless. I'm feeling hopeless. And I'm also thinking that I'm useless. You see the negative emotions and the thoughts. And these are the emotions, feelings, and thoughts which would land up to a behavior which would not be normal. And all these, let me say, are abnormal reactions. They are not symptoms, because you didn't have that sort of a thing persistently with you, and your biological functions were not disturbed over a period of a time. So friends, kindly look at it as reactions for a abnormal situation for which you are not the cause of it. So don't have a guilt that you have created the situation for you. So that should be the positive way of taking it. These are normal reactions for an abnormal situation.
Thank you for highlighting that. Thank you so much for highlighting that. That is very important for people to know. And I'd like to share the results of the poll, if we can, to see, is the conversation the same? And surprisingly, the monetary challenges are not as much as I thought it would be. It's only 25% of people who are going through stress because of the monetary challenges. The emotional challenges have been only 25%, which is again lower than I anticipated. Dysphoria, the mass dysphoria, which is just the lack of feeling satisfied, is 50%. That's the highest. Anxiety for a lot of people has risen, but that's only 47%. So even given what Dr. Shekhar has said, it actually makes sense, because you're moving from practicalities to a generalized state of, I don't know what's happening around me, and I don't know what to do, and things are not getting any better, and that is actually dysphoria. So the results are extremely accurate based on what you've mentioned in terms of even the phases. And I love how you described the phases and what people went through, just with the practicality first, and with ration and transportation and all those things, because of course those are the heavy hitting things, because you are suddenly put in a situation and you're dealing with the practicalities. And I think, and after that you kind of eased off, or people ease off into the situation, and then they recognize the added responsibility that comes with the lockdown, with the lack of support, and that played out. And post that, it's really become about the future. That's really well put, and thank you for that. You've actually explained a lot of things to us, and I want to get back to you with questions once we get them from the audience as well. Moving on to some of the serious needs to ramp up our policy decisions we'll take at the end of this, of these questions that I have for Swetha as well, and then bring you back on, Dr. Shekhar. But before that, I want to also have, because Swetha's going to come in and she's going to talk about how your body, your fitness can be used to make, as a solution to your mindset as well. But before that, let's put up the third poll, which is really talking about your well-being arc. What is it that because what we talked about here is that you should be prepared to do something for yourself to make yourself feel better, because these are like Sir said before this, that these are normal reactions in an abnormal period. And so you need to be able to do something for yourself to be able to cope with the situation better. So what aspects of well-being are you investing in? As you can read on the poll, it is about the mindset. Are you investing in mindset? Are you investing in physical fitness? Are you investing in nutrition? Are you investing in recovery? And are you investing in your environmental fitness? Environmental fitness actually comes from the policies that we have in place to support us. Recovery comes from the amount of time that you're using your breath, like Anna mentioned. How many times are you calming your amygdala, if you want to say that? I mean, how much peace are you generating in yourself through breath work? Are you using nutrition to understand that you can uphold your body, your mind, and your spirit by focusing on giving yourself good habits as well? Because junk food, junk media, junk anything creates junk. What you put in is what comes out. And physical fitness, how many of you spend time sort of investing in physical fitness? There have been so many jokes on social media about people going from being fit to being unfit. And Swetha, I'd like you to share your opinion on how you think people should cope with some of these symptoms that are coming up, and whether they can change or navigate from being stressed to being healthier at this particular point in the lockdown. You can unmute yourself, please. Thank you.
Thanks, Prakriti. Yeah, I have a few things to say about physical fitness, obviously, today. First of all, I'd like to lead with, I think, a very important point that Mrs. Chandy made with regards to her carpet example and how you bounce back from something like this. And I think that's so apt for what I'm about to tell you, in that people who have been physically conscious, been working on their physical fitness prior to this whole situation occurring, I found that those people were able to manage this situation better because they continued to work on their physical fitness in those aspects. Sorry, I'm just going to, they were able to work on their physical fitness, and that became something that saw them through this period, just building it into a routine. And I thought having a routine in general was so important during this time, because we don't have work timings anymore. Things are all over the place. So just to set a routine, one that involved physical fitness, became incredibly important. I think people had more time now to focus on their own physical fitness because, again, they were cooking for themselves. They realized, they have this time. And if you looked at social media during this period, I felt like there was a lot of content coming out, whether it was on Instagram, and people had a lot of access. A lot of fitness experts and just general industry experts, whether it was in nutrition, were going out there talking and giving people a lot of information. So I think physical fitness, if people were, investing in it before, it was a really important thing that sort of saw them through and is continuing to see them through this period. Having said that, nutrition also became very, very important, something people started paying attention to because they started cooking at home. People ate out less, obviously, because of the lockdown. You couldn't order takeout or couldn't go to a restaurant. So you had to sit at home and cook for those who were eating out often. And so I think for a group of people, the silver lining, so to speak, was that they started looking after their physical being a lot better. So that was definitely the silver lining, I would say, in this situation as far as physical fitness and generally tiding through this situation. What I also found to be, massively helpful were people were forming a little communities and working out together virtually. Initially it was, let's get on these social media calls and there was an app, I think, that came out called House Party that was very popular, where, friends from everywhere could just sort of get together and play games, etc. But then what also started happening was people were like, let's form workout groups. I, for example, am a part of a community called Sisters in Sweat, and we would play football together, physical football sessions, obviously prior to the lockdown. And post the lockdown, we pivoted and we started having virtual sessions, and we formed our own little community that we were training together. And, that was, again, a really great source of support for the community, and we were doing something good for ourselves. So the combination of, having that community feel, having access to communicate with other people within the community was great, and at the same time focusing on your physical fitness. I think Mr. Shekhar brought a very, very important point up, where we're talking about physical fitness and working out, etc. Unfortunately, I feel that is almost a luxury here. There are people who are worried about, there's migrant laborers who want to get back to their villages, and physical fitness is not something that can even occur to them, unfortunately. But for those who have access, I think it's a great tool that you should sort of tap into. The secret is out. When you work out, endorphins are released, you generally feel better. So whatever stress you're experiencing at that point is alleviated. But unfortunately, like I said, there is a whole segment that is left out that don't focus on, unfortunately, that it is not a priority. They need to put food on the table. They need to, so for those people, unfortunately, this is not something that they have access to right now. But for everybody else who's experiencing, anxiety, depression, stress, adding in physical fitness is definitely, even in the best of times, is a solution, and now definitely should be looked at more seriously.
Thanks, Swetha. That's amazing. And obviously brings to question that you have to, even if you're not feeling motivated, get up, start moving, because your body, mind, and spirit are connected. And yes, the endorphins do play a part in making you feel good. And I've often had on some of the webinars that I speak on, where they've asked, we don't really have space in the house, how do we do it? And there's always space. If you have a bed, if you have the place to stand, that's enough space. You don't need more space than that, because planks, push-ups, etc. are done in the space of the bed. And you can hop, jump, skip, pretend skip. You don't have to have a rope in a place that you stand. So you can definitely create that. And of course, you can reach out to Swetha, and I'm sure she'll give you some amazing tips. Swetha, if you can put your email address also for people on the chat, I think that'll really help. Thank you so much for that. And going to Mr. YG Muralidharan, of course, as you know, all this comes to your table because what we're talking about is really, how do we take mental health and all the work that people are putting in as experts, but really share this information with the IEC that you do as well. Share this information so that people understand that there is mental health does play an important aspect in people's lives, and it should be destigmatized by policymakers. And I think that what we've seen, although it wasn't mentioned, but what we've seen is kind of like a rise in even your own personal rights. We know that that's been thwarted just by the lockdown. That's taking away our basic right, but it's voluntary for us to do that. We're happy to do that because we know that it's safety. But we've seen, and there've been a lot of media around this, that there's been an increase in intimate partner violence, there's been an increase in child and domestic violence, child abuse, and there's been, of course, as Dr. Shekhar said, an increase in the lack of financial resources. And this has really created this sort of mass degeneration because there hasn't been any support. And I can recognize the difference being in Canada and Canadian. I recognize how policy has actually helped uphold society in a way. And as Dr. Shekhar said, people are suffering because of their livelihood being lost, whether they are migrant workers, whether they are people who have lost their jobs because the company has shut down. This is all got to do with policy. And that's why mental health and policy is linked. I would love your opinion on how we can improve the situation or improve the system going forward. You're on mute, sir. Please unmute yourself. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me start with a small realization that has happened in this COVID time. Most of the people have now started talking with mental wellness rather than mental illness. So as Dr. Shekhar was telling, the stigma still it is there, but still people have now understood what is mental wellness rather than mental illness. I think that is one of the advantage or one of the outcome of this present pandemic, which we should look into. As far as the policy decisions or the way in which we can take this input, for example, 4 lakh calls which he has received, and then a lot of input that Chandy has received, all these put together, I think we can. I think there's already a fund of knowledge or data available as far as this policy making is concerned. So we need to learn. So as you students, we learn first, and then the examination comes. But in pandemic, first it is the examination and then we learn. So this is what we have to learn now, how pandemic can give some answers to these questions. And the other peculiarity of this particular pandemic, which has policy decision or which has some impact on mental wellness, is the sufferers are more mentally, the sufferers are non-victims are more than the victims. The fear consciousness among the people are more in the non-victims rather than the victims. So then we need to see what is the policy that we can look into all those things. I'm just going through a small story, which is just 1 minute or half a second or half a minute story. When the plague demon was entering the village, there was a sadhu sitting in the entrance of the village and asked the plague. In India, the plague is called an amma, something like that. Not necessarily a gender distinction I'm telling, but just, So the plague said that I will carry some 100 people this time. The sadhu said, see, last time also you said the same thing. You take 100, but you took really 1,000 people. Then the plague replied, no, I took only 100. The fear killed another 900 people. So this fear psychosis is what is happening now. I think even in COVID times, more people are more afraid of it. How do you deal with this fear? I think only psychologists like you people have to deal what is fear, how to go about with this fear. And media, as far as policy is concerned, media needs to be, this is my personal opinion, a little bit restrained in giving the information about this COVID. Because there's so much of, we see as a consumer activist, I see so too much of exaggerated news. Agree, we need to be cautious, we need to be, take precautions, and all those things are there. But I feel exaggerated news about this COVID or dramatizing this one has led to more fear among the people. Anyway, this is a part of it. We need to give factual information. That is one policy decision. We have, as call center, what Shekhar was doing, similarly, we also had some sort of support system where I find that a lot of information by the government or the state government or central, whatever it is not reaching the people in times of COVID. For example, the eligibility conditions, the availability of beds, the availability of medicines, the availability of essential food items. So much of information was coming out of the government's websites or the other media, but unfortunately, these were not being put to the people's mind or in the availability at the people's end. So this needs to be done. I think how best we can disseminate this information so that it reaches the concerned person, the man who wants it or the women who wants it, rather than policymakers and other things. I think this is some initial remark that I can give. As far as this mental wellness, it also looks into two things, because nobody mentioned it about. A patient should also understand, or as he said, it's not patient. No, what we can control, what we cannot control. It's beyond our control. See, for instance, if I am just a common man, how I respond to the pandemic, what is my perception of the pandemic, that is COVID-19, that's very important. Second is what sort of protective measures I take to avoid COVID, such items. Then how I cope up with the pandemic. The last is how best I can avoid spreading fake news or wrong news or exaggerated news, so that I can bring down the fear among the people about this one, or the exaggerated news. I think these are all some of the issues which can go into the policy making. But if I have time, I'll just go to the next subject, topic, a subtopic which you call, for example.
Is it possible for me to take the answers of the poll first? Because what you've brought up are exactly what I wanted to bring up for the response of the poll. So if you just give me a minute. What we were talking about is, what are the aspects that you invest in? And this is important because this is your locus of control. This is really, what is it that you're doing to uphold your well-being? And you mentioned that what is in your control and what is out of your control. So therefore, let's look at what some people actually believe and what they've been doing to manifest what is in their control. Mindset is 64%. So 64% of people, and I'm sure you'll be very happy about this, people are investing in their mindset. They've understood that they need, and Dr. Shekhar, you've been answering these calls, so it actually is a great testimony to the fact that people are responding and taking care of their mental health at this point. And I think that's important, especially given your, Mr. Muralidharan, your learning by reaction. Yes, people are learning by the reaction, and this is the examination, and the results are pretty good if they're looking at their mental health. The second one that's come up, which we had asked, is physical fitness. And Swetha, 76% of people are taking care of their physical fitness. And I think that is amazing. I'm not sure that these numbers were there before the lockdown, but definitely, and house party and all these aids that have come about, they're reflecting 76%. And that's important. If you are part of the percentage that is not here, notice that it really aids your well-being. Nutrition, 42% of people, unfortunately. Let's try to increase that number and understand how supplements also like ashwagandha and roots, etc., that we have in our innate knowledge. Let's use those things to enhance our well-being. Recovery sometimes is not understood, which is probably why we've got 21. So recovery is not only meditation, but it's also the sleep that you can actually get, because sleep is what is needed for well-being. So that's a very important aspect, and I want to see that increased by the end when I ask you the last question about what you've understood. If you've understood that sleep is really important in even working out, as a weightlifter, you can't work out and grow muscle unless you rest your muscles, right? So and then of course you've got environmental fitness, which is 18%. Of course, it's out of their control, and that is why, Mr. Muralidharan, it looks like that at 18%. Thank you for the poll. We will be having one last poll as well. And so I haven't forgotten that I have to come back to you. But let's really look at one other question. We've talked about the sort of various aspects. We've talked about, how media plays a part in ensuring the destigmatization of not only COVID people who are COVID patients, which they don't want to call themselves, but have interacted with the illness, and also people, we have to mitigate the stigma of mental health in general going forward. And I think that these are some very important aspects when we're looking at what really we need to focus on for well-being. But from what we've understood, just to wrap up what we've understood, Anna spoke about the ABC model. which is really, understanding of your awareness, understanding your breath, and understanding and enhancing your communication. Dr. Shekhar talked about the various, the journey that we've had of mental health, really moving from really the practical, distress to the more emotional distresses. So the phases kind of moved up. Swetha talked about how there's been an increase, and you can see that that's happened. And Mr. Muralidharan spoke about the policies that will aid us. And just before we go into the last poll, I want to take the questions and then share them with the panelists so that they can answer these questions. So we have Sarita first, Sarita Variyar, who says, I'm a teacher online and a dance teacher for youngsters with disabilities. And also a volunteer for free for the blind and the deaf. How can I help them during this time? And I'd like you to start with your answer first so that we can aid her in her question.
I think the first thing is I would like to start by empathizing with you so that to be able to empathize with you so that, because it's not an easy task. But having said that, I think working online with people who have disabilities and different forms of different disabilities, I think we need to work creatively in terms of what would work for them. For example, if it's, if depending on what the actual disability is, and also with regard to people who have other challenges in terms of hearing challenges or things, there are different formats that we've actually developed. For example, we've done little games and little puzzles we've been working with for people who can have hearing difficulties but have very high capacity for visual healing. We've worked some puzzles for them. We've worked some forms of art therapy for them, and online art therapy. You don't need to be physical. And there are lots of online tools that we've developed. We've also developed this technique for them of storytelling. Storytelling of this narrative and what is it this narrative does. And the power, what happens with storytelling is that it actually enables people with whatever disability they have to be able to creatively look at making meaning of the story to suit their context. So this is different visuals that we do different techniques. And I think that's what teachers need to be doing. It's the same thing as going into online education. There are lots of teachers who didn't know. I know teachers who don't know technology, but who've actually written the notes and who are showing it on the screen because they don't know screen share or they don't know online teaching. So I think the time has come for us to move away from some of the traditional learning approaches and that we've used. And I link that to what Mr. Muralidharan said. For example, government information. One of the things we need to know is the information that we need to share or the teaching that we need to do. It needs to be appropriate to that target audience. For example, if you're dealing with young people between the ages of 20 to 30, whatever information you're disseminating needs to be done in 1 minute. They don't have the capacity to read long messaging. They just don't have that capacity. Now we can argue and say this is a useless generation, etc. That's one thing. The second thing is, so it's actually how do we create tools and processes that are useful for that context and for that group. So to Sarita, I would say that is how we work online. For example, some of us as therapists are actually doing new kind of work online to help people cope with distress, which we would have done differently in a contact session. That's what I would say.
Thank you very much. There's another question which is very similar, but more focused on the geriatric population. And Dr. Shekhar, I'd like you to take this. It is by Dr. Nayak, who's asked, how about managing the COVID effectively as the geriatric population is very anxious, and a common cold and cough is attributed to COVID. How would they manage? How would they manage this? And also, like some insight about the geriatric population and what you've been experiencing. Dr. Shikhar, you're on mute. Thank you.
First and foremost, how to help the elderly. There is a set of things what we need to have in our mind. Most of the elderly do have a comorbid situation. Yeah. So keep a list of the medications what they are on, and don't stop the medication for any point of a time or playing with the comorbid situation. Whether it is diabetes, whether it is hypertension, or whether it is thyroid or any other problem they are having, including that of dementia or Parkinson. Whatever the thing it has been prescribed, kindly get on to a telemedicine with your physician and get the clarifications if in case. Connect to the required resources and services as long as you are having a person who is a geriatric person above the age of 60, young old, middle old 65 to 70, and old after 70 or 80%. The requirements you have to be keeping in mind for the old person, because they are going to be a larger aspect of it. And one thing, kindly remember, these persons have a very small network of their own age members, and most of them are losing out their friends as well as the relatives. And this is one of a very major aspect what I had been talking from day one, that the normal grief reaction among these persons, saying that I was not able to see his face once. He was away 400 kilometers. Nobody was able to take me. And they said only 20 persons. I was not able to see even the sort of a thing. So keep always listening to the things and make them cheerful of listening to the experiences, like what Anna was talking about. They can give a large amount of a storytelling at this point of a time, which will also give certain information. Consider their knowledge and other thing, and make use of that at this point of a time. And what are the special needs of them? Let us understand and empathize along with them, rather than criticizing this old man. Can't he leave out his practice of going for a walk in the morning when it has been banned? Allowing him to do a walking within the home and facilitating the barriers which are on the way for that might be a better way of looking at it, the special needs of these sort of persons, and consider them as a valuable resource is the largest thing what we need to, rather than thinking that they are a burden onto us. And that would be probably the way to uplift them, and know that their world is very small. And in that world, if they are missing a particular support system, they are going to feel much bad.
Thank you so much for that. I think it's a general statement also that you're making, where we as a society ensure that our elderly are made to feel redundant. And I think this is a great example that you've given, and it's time that we all take notice of it and ensure that the wisdom that the elderly have, we utilize that, and we allow them and we give them space rather than taking away the space. I remember I had this one person who said to me on through therapy that, it's very strange that, when we were growing up, we gave our children spaces, and our children have taken away our spaces. And it's very overwhelming when you hear these stories, and of course policies come into this. And I'd like the next question first to take is really, how does one control these uncontrolled intrusive thoughts? And of course, is online counseling safe? Which Indian sites are reliable? I would like, who would like to answer that question?
About intrusive thoughts, let me explain. There are three components to any type of an impact which comes, whether it is a disaster or a pandemic or a sort of a situation. This is called as intrusiveness, avoidance, as well as hypervigilance. Now, when we are talking about intrusive, you don't want to think about it, but the thought comes to you, number one. And pictures about it pop up in your mind. that red ball with all those sort of a thing, what they explained.
Yes.
It keeps coming in front of me all the time, like a ping pong ball.
Yeah.
I don't want to look at that ball, but that ball comes to me.
Yes.
And I stayed away from the thing. But a small little reminder when somebody spoke that so-and-so in our layout had this problem, so-and-so in the gated community had the problem. Oh, the servant it carried the problem.
Oh.
So I get thoughts about it. I thought about it when I don't want to think about it, and I did not mean to think about it. Friends, again, I'm saying there's a part and parcel of the situation where we are sailing. These sort of thoughts are going to be coming to each and every one of us. Let us first be sure that these thoughts are part of the impact what the pandemic has brought in for us, and don't avoid this sort of a thing by saying, I'm going to shut it. I'm going to close it. It's not your window not to allow the mosquito to come in.
Yeah.
These thoughts are going to be there. And the last part of it, when it is coming, you're going to have a bit of a heartbeat. You're going to have a bit of a sweating. And there is going to be a bit of a tremor which is going to occur on your hands.
Yeah.
These are all normal for that point of a time. But in case if it becomes exceedingly too much and I am all of a sudden feeling breathless, not because of COVID, but because of this situation, kindly contact a professional who would be able to deal both behaviorally and at times if medication is required, they would also institute a co-therapy medication.
Yes, thank you very much. And I want to ask a question to Mr. Muralidharan. There's a question that's come up, which is, how do we guide our students at this time? Because they're very, worried about the future. And I remember that Anna said that the ages of 21 to about 32 or something like that. Yeah,
24.
Were very involved in being nervous about the future. And just need your opinion on what can be done at this point for them. About the students, the college students who are just graduating, who are worried about the future. What are some of the things we can tell them at this point?
When I spoke about what things that can be controlled and that should not be controlled or beyond our control, this point I had. For example, how the government responds. The economic consequences, I put it in a bigger word, broader category. I think they need not lose their hope. Just one pandemic or one crisis is not the final. So we need to look into some positive angle of the pandemic also. For instance, not all sectors in the economy has been affected. There are certain economies, a week back, I was just traveling from one place to Bengaluru. The people were selling some pens or pencils or some such things. Now they are selling these masks, this covering. So there is a change in the job, a change in the specification of the job requirements and all. So the economic situation may worsen, definitely, but this is a temporary phase of this economy, and college students, young people need not worry so much about it. Let them concentrate on improving their present capacity. Things will move. Things will come. Better things will come. And we have seen more serious pandemic, more serious situations in the past, and we have learned. And I think same thing will repeat. So this will also pass. So that's the only hope I can give you to the students or the young people.
Yes. I want to thank you for that. And it's very important because in most countries, they're really focusing on what to do with the youth. Because the mass dysphoria, which was displayed in our poll, would really be quite relevant with the policies and the interaction of the two. I know there are a lot of questions that have come out, and we will not be able to answer all of them, but I want to go to the last poll before I have closing remarks from all of you. And Swetha, if you, in your closing remarks, if you can take on the question of perseverance, it would be great. Okay, so the question is really, have you understood how to bank your mental health and well-being? What that means is, and this is a yes and no, what that means is use the things that are in your control, let go of the things that are not in your control. As Dr. Shekhar wisely put it, it is not a window that you have control over, and nor is this mosquito. So let's look at what you do have in your control, and whether you've understood how to utilize the things and mobilize well-being from what everybody here has said. I'm going to wait for that answer, but before that, Swetha, I'd love to have your closing remarks on this. The question that came up, Swetha, was, somebody who believes in perfection and, finds it really difficult. I know perfection is also part of something that, we utilize when we're using exercise as a mandate. Therefore, I'd like you to hopefully close with that as well.
Right. Yeah, that's a very interesting point. And I think to look at physical fitness and taking control of that aspect of your life at a time like this is incredibly important. And I just want to talk about a few of the reasons why this is something that we need to particularly invest in. And it was great to see the poll results come out that, people, 76%, I think it was, that were already thinking about their physical fitness and investing in it. So why do I believe, and I think most people have come to the realization that it is important. One, of course, and I touched upon this, was just building in a routine. To start your day with something that's positive, like a workout, for example, is an incredibly important thing during this time when their routine is in many ways out the window, right? So you start your day with a workout, you end your day with a workout, gives you, sets a routine in place, which is important. Two, it gives you a sense of control when a lot of things seem to be out of your control at this point. So to be able to work with your body, bring about change, positive change in your body, gives you a sense of, gives you back a sense of control, which at a time like this, like I said, could be lost completely. I also spoke about the endorphin release post a workout, at a time like this when, the general sentiment is one of, feeling a bit low, perhaps a little depressed. Everybody comes out at the end of a workout feeling better. So that's one of the reasons I think we definitely should look at, building in a fitness routine to our daily lives. The other thing is about building in a sense of achievement. A lot of us have lost our jobs. Maybe there have been pay cuts. The nature of business has changed. And this feeling of, I am a loser perhaps is in your head, or I don't have control, or whatever it is. When you work out and you have physical fitness incorporated into your life, and you see that you've achieved small goals, whether it is, you can run for 10 minutes longer, or you can do this workout for a little longer, you're seeing changes in your body. That's a sense of achievement and a sort of positive reinforcement, which is really great to have during this time. We also spoke about rest and recovery and how important that is. And at the end of a workout, and if it's a moderate intensity workout, trust me, you're going to have a really great night's sleep. And that's something that we need. We need a good routine in place, and, working out and just, tiring out from the workout gives you that rest automatically. So that's another reason why I think, incorporating fitness into your daily life is so important. And the other thing which is a sort of very linked is the nutritional aspect. Once you start working out and, doing something good for your body, you don't want to put junk in your body after that. The general mindset is, I've put in the work, now I'm not going to undo it by eating something unhealthy. So you start focusing on your nutrition as well. And then the final aspect that I wanted to touch upon is community. So people have started working out virtually in groups, and they have formed those communities. And so the communication within that community has worked as a support system. So I think I've just listed out, I would say, a few of the many reasons why we need to incorporate fitness into our daily routine, especially in a time like this.
Thank you so much. Anna, in your closing remarks, I know I want to leave this open to you, but there's another question that came up, which I would love for you to handle and close with that. It's by Vijay Lokpali, who says, is depression and illness a condition that needs to be handled with more compassion than medication? How best to deal with it?
So I think first, I want to separate the term which is very commonly used is I'm feeling depressed, which is I'm of low mood. And clinical depression, yes, it's an illness. And clinical depression is an illness which is diagnosed by a psychiatrist. And you work with the psychiatrist and the therapist to be able to recover. So I think because, what happens in today's language, people constantly say, he is depressed, I am depressed. But at that point in the daily parlance, it means I am of low mood. Everybody who says I am depressed is not suffering from clinical depression. We need to first separate this. And I think that's very important. Coming to how do I end this? I think, as I said, I would end with the ABC, and that is, like Dr. Shekhar said, we need to account for the reality, and that is we can't close the window because the mosquito can come in, and we have abnormal situation, and therefore we have reactions to this abnormal situation. The second part is looking after your body and breath. Swetha has talked about looking after the body, and to me, breath is very important because it does calm you, even if it means temporary calming when we are in an agitated state. And for me, the third is communicate. And that's what, again, Mr. Muralidharan was talking, it's media and communication. And the communication should be information that is not, implanting and increasing toxicity by these exaggerated, sensationalized narratives and stories, but they need to be factual, and they need to be information that is factual for us to digest, so that we look after ourselves and protect ourselves, and also we become inclusive and not divisive. Currently, a lot of the information that we get, even with regard to COVID and the stigma associated with COVID and the stigma associated with mental illness, is because the information itself is very divisive and it's not inclusive. So I think this is what I would say, this is the way I would end. And I think we all need to work. And my term is that we need to now engage in collective consciousness and collective leadership.
Thank you very much. That's a great ending statement. I think, Dr. Shekhar, we're waiting on your last words before we wrap up.
Well, probably as a last thought of it, I would rather mention that we need to do a catwalk. I really mean a catwalk, a slow walk. What is this catwalk? Be connected with your family, friends, and your fellows. Be active, like what Swetha said, whether it is physical or even climbing up the stairs within your own house or doing yoga. It's all can be done within your own house. So be active. Tap into your senses. You have 5 senses. Make use of every sense of it. Early morning, I opened my door to see whether today the yellow roses came up or the red roses came up. That makes my day. The aroma of the new recipe, what my wife makes much more scintillating for my tongue. So tap your senses. That is for the cat. Be connected, be active, and be tapping into your resources, what you're having in terms of the senses, and walk slowly, because the stilettos can fall and the shoe can slip. So how to do the walk? Watch your surrounding, and for the appropriate messages, what you need to take, rather than the rumors like what Muralidharan said, and adapt to the situation. We need to adapt to the situation. And like Muralidharan said, the students learn things out of this particular situation, which is an opportunity against the threat. And last, let us be kind to ourselves as well as the humanity. Thank you very much. Let us be largely inclusive rather than exclusive.
Thank you. There's a humorous thing where people say that psychologists and psychiatrists have a lot of acronyms for things. And we've had ABC, we've had the CAT, which is amazing because we're actually showcasing that is true. We love these acronyms. And what you can see from this, and I'm wrapping up because where we've come to almost our time with everybody. But what you see here is all of us harping on the fact that mental well-being is active, not passive. You have to be actively involved in your well-being. And I know whenever I speak on this and I say, fight to manage stress. And, I have people who are very zen who'll say, but this fight is so negative. Why do we need to fight it? Why can't we manage it? And I'm like, you manage your relationships because you want to keep them. You manage your peers, you manage your co-workers. You don't manage stress, you don't want it, you fight it. You fight it with the mind, with the body, with the nutrition, with the thoughts that you will have. I mean, I love this new cat one. I'm going to use it as a cat phrase. Amazing. So connect with your family, be active, and tap into all your senses. And I think that is amazing. And to Deccan Herald for sparking this conversation on DH Sparks. I think it's really been amazing that you've put this group of panelists together. Every single person here has a part to play in the larger scheme of things and has described all the elements. And getting back to our poll, the poll was really about, have you understood how to bank your mental health and these aspects? And 83% of people have. So that is a testimony to how well they've understood what we were talking about. And thank you very much to everybody for being here. Namaste.
Thank you.